Welcome to the Explainer. If you're a procurement manager, a B2B buyer, or you run a brand dealing in high-performance gear, well, you've landed in exactly the right place. Today, we're opening up the ultimate 2026 playbook for navigating China's incredibly complex workwear manufacturing landscape. You know, sourcing workwear is just a completely different beast compared to standard fashion apparel. I mean, the stakes are so much higher, the technical requirements are way stricter, and your margin for error? Basically zero. So we've distilled down exactly what you absolutely need to know to find, vet, and partner with the top manufacturers right now. Let's get right into it. Here's our roadmap for today. We'll be covering the sourcing paradigm shift, China's manufacturing clusters, choosing the right suppliers, the procurement logic, and finally getting from the RFQ stage to final logistics. All right, Section 1, the sourcing paradigm shift. We really need to start with this fundamental shift that's happening in global demand right now. The market for high-performance gear has evolved dramatically, and frankly, your procurement strategy needs to evolve right along with it. Because look, the modern sourcing reality has completely flipped. The old days of just scouring the globe for the absolute lowest price and the cheapest labor, those days are officially over. Done. Today, the new baseline for even doing business is technical compliance with rigorous ISO, EN, and ASTM standards. Your new priorities really have to be sustainability, supply chain transparency, and above all, safety. Think about it. If your gear fails out in the field, it's not just a bad review on a website. It's a massive, real-world liability. Moving on to Section 2, China's manufacturing clusters. This brings us to where you should actually be looking. China is still the absolute epicenter of the workwear industry, but you can't just throw a dart at a map and hope for the best. Unlike sewing general garments, workwear needs highly specific machinery. We're talking seam sealing, reflective tape application, and some pretty advanced chemical treatments. To really navigate this landscape, you've got to understand a concept called the cluster effect. Basically, this is the geographic concentration of specialized manufacturers, raw material suppliers, and technical machinery all packed into one specific region. It's like a giant puzzle where all the related pieces are grouped together. This is exactly why your geographical strategy has to be step one. If you send an RFQ for flame-retardant gear to a cluster that only specializes in, say, basic cotton t-shirts, well, you're setting yourself up for failure before you even start. So let's break down exactly how these clusters shake out. This is essentially the insider secret to knowing exactly where to source your specific category. For heavy-duty industrial and cold weather gear, you're going to look to Shandong. They're home to heavyweights like Jining Stanley or Shandong Derrick if you're talking massive volume wholesale. Now, if you need high-end custom or tech-integrated uniforms, Guangdong is your hub. Look for specialists there like Patton. For high-visibility gear or medical scrubs, Zhejiang and Zhejiang totally dominate that space. Think China Stars for safety and Leo Scanlon for medical. Henan is the textile hub for flame-retardant fabrics, led by Xingsheng Weiss. And for cost-effective, disposable PPE, Hubei is absolutely your go-to with massive capacity suppliers like Vican. Oh, and if you're a brand needing premium European spec garments, checking out the China operations of a brand like Fristad's is basically the gold standard. Okay, Section 3, choosing the right supplier. Let's shift gears from that macro geography down to your micro strategy. Knowing the clusters is a great start, but now you need to identify exactly what kind of buyer you are. Think of this as your personal consultant matrix. You really want to find your business model here to pinpoint your sourcing sweet spot. If you're an e-commerce seller, your priority is being fast and nimble, right? You want low minimum order quantities or MOQs and fast shipping. So you target Ningbo or Guangdong ODM factories where those MOQs sit around 300 to 500 pieces. Conversely, if you're a bulk wholesaler, you need a massive footprint. You're focusing on price and massive capacity, targeting those mass production plants in Shandong or Hubei with MOQs upwards of 2,000. Now, if you own a PPE brand, your absolute lifeblood is certification and compliance. You need those highly technical manufacturers in Henan or Shanghai. And lastly, if you're a corporate client needing customized, head-to-toe uniform looks, you want the design specialists in Guangdong. Stick to this matrix, guys, and you'll avoid wasting literally weeks negotiating with completely mismatched factories. Which leads us nicely into Section 4, the procurement logic. We've reached what is arguably the most critical part of this entire explainer. Because look, finding a factory, that's the easy part. Anyone can search an online directory, but properly vetting them, that requires a strict, unwavering logic. Here is your non-negotiable three-step procurement logic. Step 1, the technical certification audit. Step 2, fabric sourcing and control. And Step 3, Sample evaluation, also known as the wear test. Now listen closely to this part. Price shouldn't even be brought up with a supplier until these 3 boxes are firmly, absolutely checked off. Let's look at step 1, the certification audit. Remember, workwear is essentially personal protective equipment. These certifications act as literal protective shields for your brand's reputation and your end users' lives. You need to verify standards like EN ISO 2471 for high visibility, EN 1162 for heat and flame, OKIO Tech Standard 100 to ensure there are no harmful chemicals, and BSCI or SEDEX for social compliance. And here is a golden rule for you. Demand original test reports from recognized third parties like UL, SGS, or Intertech. Never, ever accept photocopied reports. Just don't do it. For step 2, I want you to remember this massive number, 60 to 70%. That right there is how much of your final garment cost is tied solely to the fabric and workwear. That's a huge chunk. You've got to ask your suppliers the tough questions about fabric control. Do they weave it in-house? What's the color fastness grade? Is it at least a standard 4+ for heavy industrial washing? What is the exact shrinkage rate after 50 washes? Because at the end of the day, if the fabric fails, the whole garment fails, no matter how beautiful the stitching is. Which brings us to step 3, sample evaluation. I absolutely love this piece of advice we pulled from our sources. Don't just look at the sample in a boardroom. Give it to a worker. I mean, it hits the nail on the head, right? A clean, perfectly pressed sample sitting on a conference table tells you absolutely nothing about how it's actually going to perform on a muddy construction site or a freezing oil rig. You really have to execute a physical wear test. And when that sample is finally out in the field getting put through its paces, here's what you need to look out for. Check those stress points at the crotch and the pockets. Are they properly bar tacked? Confirm the fabric breathability, the GSM, actually matches the climate it's intended for. And verify the hardware. Are they using proven brands like YKK or SBS for their zippers? Here's a little industry secret for you. Cheap, unbranded zippers are statistically the #1 cause of costly workwear returns. No way around it. There is nothing worse than a $100 jacket rendered completely useless by a 10-cent zipper. So please, do not cut corners on the hardware. All right, let's move on to section 5, RFQ to final logistics. It's time to bring this playbook home and map out the exact chronological workflow from your very first request all the way to getting your goods on a boat. This right here is your exact 6-step sequence to mitigate risk. First, provide a highly detailed tech pack. Second, enter the RFQ phase by sending that pack out to 3 to 5 targeted factories based on those specific clusters we discussed earlier. Third is sample development, which usually takes about 7 to 14 days. Fourth, the factory audit. Fifth, quality inspection. And finally, step 6 is logistics. If you skip a step, you're basically multiplying your risk. And let me highlight a really hard rule for financial risk management during steps 4 and 5 of that workflow. Consider this your trigger. If your order is over $50,000, you absolutely must demand a third-party factory audit from a group like Kima or SGS before production scales up. And you never, ever ship a container without a DUPR, which is a during production inspection, or an FRI, a final random inspection. As the saying goes, trust, but aggressively verify. To wrap up the operational side of things, let's address a few rapid-fire logistics tips so you're totally prepared for that first order. First up, minimums. For truly custom workwear, expect your MOQs to start at around 1,000 pieces. However, and this is a great workaround, if you use ready-to-ship fabrics in common colors like navy or high-vis orange, you can often negotiate that down to just 300 or 500 pieces. Next, on the branding front. Yes, most of these manufacturers are OEM experts. They'll handle the whole shebang, from your private labeling to custom hang tags and branded packaging. Finally, for shipping. Moving heavy workwear usually means sea freight is the standard, but definitely keep sea-air hybrids in your back pocket if you're ever chasing a really tight seasonal deadline. So, I want to leave you with this final, somewhat provocative thought. As we've established today, price is the third thing you should check. Never, ever the first. Are you currently risking your brand's reputation and, more importantly, your end user's actual safety just to get a slightly cheaper quote from an unvetted factory? It's really time to re-examine those supply chain priorities using the strategies we've walked through today. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and hey, here's to sourcing a whole lot smarter in 2026.